But let's start now with the major breaking news. I can tonight reveal the 2 targets of the caravan filled with explosives. The addresses written down inside the caravan were of the Great Synagogue in Sydney and the Sydney Holocaust Museum. To think perpetrators would have potentially targeted a museum commemorating the Holocaust, a time when 6 million Jews were killed, is truly horrifying. This is a museum to educate the public, to educate future generations, and to honour the memories of those lost, and to make sure that anti-Semitism never happens again. Now, that second address inside the caravan, my sources tell me, is the Great Synagogue. This is a beautiful temple in the heart of Sydney's CBD. A synagogue I know well. I had my bat mitzvah there and my parents were married there. Now, these targets, this is information the police haven't released publicly, but we think you have the right to know. The more information we know, the more the Jewish community can protect themselves. David Ossip is on my show tonight, and he confirms that no Jewish community or security organisations were told about this terror threat before the Daily Telegraph broke the news yesterday.
The first we had specific information about this incident was when the Daily Telegraph article was published.
And the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, is now facing questions about what he knew and when. And he's under pressure for his, it's too soft a word to say inadequate, but his inadequate handling of this wave of anti-Semitic terror in our country. He joked around on a talkback radio station, an FM radio station, instead of holding a major press conference first thing this morning. He went on Kyle and Jackie O's show, where the first question was, what does the Prime Minister do on Christmas Day? He could have come out or even come on here on Sky News and answered tough questions about this wave of domestic terror, but instead he chose to go on a light-hearted breakfast radio show.
You don't even wake up on Christmas Day and and walk out in your undies and just have a look what's under the tree. There's none of that for you.
Did you fly home straight after and spend it with the family? Or
none of that. Oh, look, it was, Jody came up with me, so it was, and the Governor-General was there. It was one of the best things I have done in my life.
Oh, well, there you go.
You need to hang out with me more, because I've done heaps better things than that.
well, that could get both of us in trouble, particularly me.
Well, yes, your job would be in jeopardy. Kyle might be okay.
To say this is disrespectful is an understatement. Eventually, after some joking and back and forth, and I don't blame Kyle and Jackie O, of course not. This is their radio show, it's their job. I blame the Prime Minister for this. After some back and forth, they eventually got to the Thwarted terror attack.
But thank God for an eagle-eyed resident.
Thank God.
Area.
Or whoever that person is has saved so many lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the authorities, of course, are continuing their investigation. The Irish see regular briefings, of course, on security issues. And can I say this, that our police and our security and intelligence agencies do an amazing job. And people need to be held to account for what are crimes. We need to put these people in the clink and keep them there.
Put them in the clink and keep them there. How did we end up with this Prime Minister? And that was his phrase for the day, put them in the clink. He kept repeating it. The Prime Minister refused to say today when he was told about this terror threat of the caravan with explosives. The Premier, Chris Minns, had no problem saying that he was briefed on January the 20th, but Albanese, when asked, claimed that was an operational question.
So, was it a few days after the 19th? You haven't given us a date, but
I don't go into operational. I don't go into operational details.
When the Prime Minister was briefed by police is not an operational matter. If it was, the Premier wouldn't have been able to answer the same question. Shadow Home Affairs Minister James Patterson said the Prime Minister needs to explain when he was told and what action he took. Here he was speaking with my colleague Chris Kenny.
When was the Prime Minister briefed? Was he briefed on the same day as Chris Minns? And if so, what action did he take in response to this? Did he convene a National Security Committee of Cabinet? What measures did they put in place to protect the Jewish community and all Australians? What reassurance did they provide the Jewish community based on their knowledge of this incident? Or if in fact he was not briefed, then we need to understand why, because if the New South Wales Premier knows, then the Prime Minister should surely know.
And Peter Dutton came out and said that this anti-Semitic crisis is because the Prime Minister failed to take early action.
This is a deeply concerning matter, and it hasn't gone away as an issue for our country. We're still seeing overnight attacks on Jewish homes, and when you have Holocaust survivors who have lived in our country since 1945 in peace are now saying that they feel unsafe in our country, it is a national disgrace. And the Prime Minister has presided over this deteriorating situation, and I want to make sure that we can do everything we can.
Meanwhile, Treasurer Jim Chalmers has apologised today after clumsy wording on breakfast television when he implied that the Jewish community's fears had sometimes been unfounded.
Look, this is obviously a terrifying development, and what it shows is that the fears that a lot of Australians in the Jewish community have are not always unfounded. This is a chilling course of events, deeply troubling, unsettling, and what it shows is that the fears in the Jewish community are not always unfounded.
The Treasurer told me today that he was sorry for these choice of words, and I don't believe he's our enemy. Unlike Albanese and Penny Wong and Tony Burke, the Treasurer has never been a pro-Palestinian activist. Chalmers said to me that he's had that relayed to him, how it was interpreted. He said, "I apologise. My intention was to share and acknowledge the very real and understandable fears and concerns in the Jewish community in light of recent events. I could have and should have expressed that more clearly, and I'm sorry I didn't." We've never ever heard Penny Wong or Albanese apologise for deliberately offending the community. And Jim Chalmers told me he also phoned a small number of Jewish community leaders and relayed that message directly to them. Now, I want to talk about the actual incident itself. And here's what we know so far. Scott Marshall and Tammy Ferrugia. Now, I showed you these two on my show early last week. I was the first journalist to name and show you the image of Scott Marshall there. And I told you how they'd been charged in relation, or at least Tammy had been charged in relation to the Woollahra vandalism, where cars were torched and homes were graffitied. This was the second Woollahra vandalism incident. You may recall I also showed you how Tammy had posted online looking for a jerry can. Well, now this same pair are part of the police investigation relating to the caravan with explosives. The Herald reported that Tammy posted online looking for a caravan. And here are those posts. There's two of them. Anyone got a caravan for sale? Need one ASAP? I've got money. Police Commissioner Karen Webb said police did have in custody the owner of the caravan.
The registered owner of that caravan is a person that is in custody on unrelated matters. The owner is out of play and in custody.
And police are still investigating who's behind all of this. They believe that career criminals have been hired to commit these attacks. They say they are very confident that they'll catch the perpetrators behind it all.
The matters, as I said, the graffiti overnight will be under investigation and taken as seriously as other matters, and we'll continue to hunt those people until we find them.
The New South Wales Police are doing everything possible to catch these people.
And Karen Webb went on to attack the Daily Telegraph for publishing this information. We wouldn't know about any of this if it weren't for Mark Murray and his editor, Ben English. And I can tell you, the police didn't ask the Telegraph not to publish. If they had, Ben English, of course, would have held off publishing. He's not going to jeopardise a terrorist investigation. But the police didn't ask. So there could be good operational reasons for not going public, and we'll give the police the benefit of the doubt. But given they, look, you have to say, lied or at least misled us yesterday. They claimed the Jewish community had been informed, and we now know the Jewish community hadn't. Well, we'll just have to wait until all the facts are on the table.